this is a review of the Edgenuity lesson, Solving Quadratic Equations, Completing the Square. So the goal when we complete the square is we want something squared equals a number over here, so that what we can do to solve is we just square root both sides instead of factoring or using the quadratic formula. So to get that something perfect square, what we need to do first is you need to get the constant on the other side of the equation, because this 21, that is not a perfect square. So I'm going to subtract 21 from both sides to start off. So then what I have is x squared minus 10x, and I'm going to leave a little space there, equals negative 21. So from there, we need to identify what b is. So remember, a is the number that's in front of your x squared, b is the number that's in front of your plain x, and then c would be our constant, but we moved that over. So for this one, b is negative 10. So that's the first thing we do. Then we take b and we divide it by 2. So negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And then when I get to this step, as soon as I divide b by 2, I highlight it, because this is going to come in handy here in a minute. So then the last thing we do over here is we take what we got for b divided by 2 and we square it. So we got negative 5. Make sure you use parentheses when you have a negative. Negative 5 squared is 25. Now that tells us what we need to add on to both sides of the equation to make this side be a perfect square. As a reminder, if you do something to one side, you got to do it to the other. So I'm going to add 25 in here. I'm also going to add 25 in on the right. So negative 21 plus 25 is 4. Now what we have just done is we have created that this will factor into a perfect something squared. If you want to know what goes in that parentheses, you will use what you got for b divided by 2. So that's why I highlighted this green here. So we're going to do x, and you take this step, negative 5. So that's what you put inside the parentheses. Then you just solve like normal. So to get rid of the squared, we're going to square root both sides. Those cancel. Remember, both sides of an equation, you have to put a plus or minus in front. And the square root of 4 is 2. And then the last step here is to add 5. So 5 plus or minus 2. Where a lot of people go wrong is they just add the 5 onto the 2 and say it's plus or minus 7. That's not how it works. You actually have to split it up into 2 separate answers. One where you do 5 plus 2, which will give you a positive 7, but 5 minus 2 gives you positive 3. So those are our 2 solutions, 7 and 3. Okay, so for this one, we have x squared by itself, but on the right, we have the negative 5x and the constant negative 3 over there. So we need to get the x and the x squared on the same side, but leave this guy over there. So I'm going to add 5x to both sides. So x squared plus 5x, again, I'm going to leave a little gap there, equals negative 3. So we're going to take b, number in front of the plain x, divide it by 2. I'm just going to leave it written as 5 halves there. And then we're going to square it. So take what we got for b divided by 2. Oops. Highlight. That's going to go inside our parenthesis. So 5 halves squared is 25 fourths. So on both sides, we are going to add in 25 fourths. When you square a fraction, you just square the top and then square the bottom. So on the left, this is going to factor into x, and then we got a positive 5 halves. So positive 5 halves squared. Okay, so here we have an integer plus a fraction. So I'm going to write it as negative 3 over 1 plus 25 fourths. Have to have common denominators, so I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by 4. And then negative 12 plus 25 is 13 fourths. So then what we do, we just solve like normal. So undo the squared by square rooting both sides. When you square root, you have to put a plus or minus on the top, and you can do the square root of the top divided by the square root of the bottom. Can't square root 13, but the square root of 4 is 2. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to subtract 5/2 from both sides. So you'll notice that we have common denominators here. You can either keep them as separate fractions because 5 and root 13 are not like terms and we can't put them together, so they have to stay apart. Or we could write it as one big fraction, and in the numerator just go -5 plus or minus root 13, and then the whole thing is just over 2 because those are common denominators.